The western coast of the United States, a land of rugged beauty where mountains meet the sea, has always been a battleground between humanity and nature's untamed forces. In recent years, storms of unprecedented ferocity have battered this region, leaving tales of destruction that echo through small fishing towns and bustling ports alike. From Washington's Puget Sound to the rocky shores of Oregon and California, these tempests churn the Pacific into a frothing beast, tearing apart docks, homes, and dreams. Boats, once symbols of livelihood and adventure, bob helplessly before succumbing to the waves. Fishermen, whose families have worked these waters for generations, watch as their vessels wooden and steel alike crack and sink beneath the weight of nature's wrath. These storms don't just destroy property, they shatter pride, the kind built on years of battling the elements and believing humans could tame the wild. The hubris of coastal communities, who thought their harbors invincible, lies in tatters as the ocean reclaims what it never truly surrendered. Climate shifts have intensified these events, with rising sea temperatures fueling stronger winds and higher surges. Data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows a 20% increase in extreme weather events along the West Coast over the past decade. The storms are not just weather, they're a reckoning, a reminder that nature bows to no one. Every sunken boat tells a story of loss, not just of material but of identity, as communities grapple with a future where the sea grows ever more merciless. In the small town of Astoria, Oregon, the memory of the Great Storm of 2023 lingers like a ghost. Winds clocked at 90 miles per hour tore through the Columbia River's mouth, where fishing boats anchored in the marina were tossed like toys. By dawn, a dozen vessels had sunk, their masts jutting from the water like broken bones. For men like Captain Job Harker, who lost his family's 40-year-old trawler, the storm was more than a financial blow-up, it was a wound to his soul. "That boat was my father's, his father's before him," he said, voice cracking, in a local news interview. Pride in craftsmanship, in knowing every knot and current, meant nothing when the waves rose 20 feet high. Across the coast, similar stories unfold. In Crescent City, California, a yacht club's fleet was reduced to splinters, the wealthy owners humbled as their million-dollar toys vanished. The storms don't discriminate, grabbing boats, pleasure crafts, and freighters all fall. The economic toll is staggering. A single storm can cause millions in damages, with insurance payouts often falling short. Beyond money, the cultural loss stings deeper. Coastal festivals, where boats were once paraded with pride, now carry a somber tone. The West Coast's maritime heritage, built on tales of triumph over the sea, faces an uncertain future as storms rewrite the narrative. Social media posts from X capture the despair. "Lost my boat, my livelihood, what now?" One user wrote, echoing a collective grief. The science behind these storms paints a grim picture. Meteorologists point to a warming Pacific Ocean, where sea surface temperatures have risen by 1.5 degrees Celsius since the 1980s. Supercharging storm systems. Low-pressure systems, once predictable, now spiral into monsters, fueled by moist air and erratic jet streams. In 2024, a series of atmospheric rivers and narrow corridors of water vapor slammed California, dumping 15 inches of rain in 48 hours in some areas. The resulting flood swamped coastal infrastructure, while winds toppled century-old trees onto power lines. Boats moored in harbors stood little chance. Many were lifted by surges and smashed against piers. The National Weather Service reported 60-foot waves off Cape Mendocino, a height that dwarfs most vessels. Yet, it's not just the raw power of these storms that humbles community assets, their unpredictability. Fishermen who once relied on almanacs and gut instinct now face seasons thrown into chaos. Pride and self-reliance erodes when forecasts fail, and even the most seasoned sailors find themselves at the mercy of a climate in flux. On X, a meteorologist posted, "We're seeing storms we can't model accurately anymore. It's like nature's rewriting the rules." The sinking of boats becomes a symbol of this new reality, where human ingenuity, once a shield, feels like a flimsy defense against an ocean that no longer plays fair. The human cost of these storms extends beyond the immediate wreckage. In places like Newport, Oregon, entire communities revolve around fishing, tourism, and shipping. When storms sink boats, they sink livelihoods too. Crab season, a lifeline for many coastal towns, was delayed in 2024 after a November tempest destroyed half the local fleet. Families who depended on those hulls faced empty tables and mounting debts. Pride, once rooted in providing for loved ones, crumbles when the sea takes everything. Mental health crises have spiked, with local clinics reporting a 30% increase in counseling requests after major storms. The loss of a boat isn't just a loss of equipment, it's a loss of identity, of purpose. For some, the shame of failure drives them away. Posts from displaced fishermen reveal moves inland, abandoning the coast for good. Yet, not all give up. Community efforts to rebuild are fierce, with crowdfunding campaigns raising thousands to replace lost vessels. But these efforts clash with the growing realization the storms are getting worse. Insurance companies, wary of rising claims, have hiked premiums or dropped coverage entirely, leaving boat owners exposed. The pride of self-sufficiency, a hallmark of these rugged communities, is tested as they lean on government aid or charity, a bitter pill for those who've always stood tall against the odds. The environmental toll of these storms compounds the tragedy. Sunken boats leak fuel, oil, and plastics into fragile marine ecosystems. In 2023, a storm off Monterey Bay sank a trawler carrying 2,000 gallons of diesel, creating a slick that poisoned fish and seabirds for miles. Clean-up efforts, often underfunded, take months, while the damage lingers for years. Coral reefs, already stressed by warming waters, face further harm from debris. Environmentalists on X have called for stricter regulations on boat fuel storage, but enforcement lags. Meanwhile, the storms erode coastlines, swallowing beaches and wetlands that once buffered towns from the sea's fury. In Washington, the Quinault Indian Nation lost sacred land to a 2024 storm surge, a cultural gut punch that no amount of pride can repair. The irony is stark. The same ocean that sustained these communities now threatens their existence. Yet, some still cling to their way of life, their pride unbroken even as the evidence mounts. Scientists warn that without drastic cuts to global emissions, the West Coast could see a 40% increase in storm intensity by 2050. For now, each sunken boat is a warning, a signal that nature's patience has worn thin, and humanity's arrogance in exploiting the sea comes at a steep cost. The stories of resilience, though, shine through the wreckage. In Coos Bay, Oregon, a group of fishermen banded together after a 2022 storm to salvage what they could. Using borrowed boats, they pulled debris from the harbor, saving some vessels from total loss. Their pride wasn't in defying the storm but in rebuilding together. On X, videos of their efforts went viral, showing weathered hands hauling ropes and patching holes. "We don't quit," one fisherman posted, a sentiment that resonates across the coast. In San Francisco, a yacht owner turned his loss into advocacy, raising funds for storm-proofing harbors. These acts of defiance against despair show a different kind of pride, one rooted in community, not conquest. Yet, the challenges are daunting. Rebuilding costs millions, and federal grants are slow to arrive. Some towns have started relocating infrastructure inland, a pragmatic but painful retreat. The sinking of boats becomes a metaphor for letting go of old ways, of stubborn independence. Younger generations, raised on tales of their ancestors' triumphs at sea, now question whether to stay. A 2025 survey by the Pacific Fisheries Management Council found 25% of young fishermen plan to leave the industry within 5 years, citing unpredictable weather as the top reason. Pride battles pragmatism, and for many, the choice is heartbreaking. The cultural narrative of the West Coast is shifting with each storm. Once, tales of sailors conquering the Pacific defined the region's identity. Think of the Klondike Gold Rush or the bold explorers of the 19th century. Now, the stories are of loss, adaptation, and survival. Museums along the coast, like the Columbia River Maritime Museum, have added exhibits on recent storms, showcasing salvaged boat parts and oral histories from survivors. These displays aren't just about mourning, they're about redefining pride as resilience, not dominance. On X, locals share photos of rebuilt docks and repaired boats, captioned with hashtags like #WestCoastStrong. But beneath the optimism lies fear. Climate models predict that by 2030, the West Coast could face storms twice as frequent as today, with sea levels rising up to a foot. For communities already stretched thin, the future feels like a looming wave. The sinking of boats is no longer a rare tragedy but a recurring nightmare, each one chipping away at the myth of human control. Yet, some cling to hope, investing in stronger vessels and better warning systems. Pride, in this new form, is less about mastery and more about endurance, about finding ways to coexist with a sea that demands respect rather than submission. As the sun sets over the battered West Coast, the horizon tells a dual story of loss and defiance. The storms that sink boats and pride alike leave scars, but they also forge a new kind of strength. From the wreckage, communities are learning slowly, painfully that survival means adaptation, not resistance. Fishermen are retrofitting boats with stronger hulls, harbors are raising seawalls, and towns are rethinking their relationship with the ocean. On X, a viral post from a California mayor read, "We lost boats, but not our spirit." This sentiment captures the heart of the region's response. Pride, once tied to conquering nature, now lies in rising from its blows. The storms will keep coming, fiercer and more frequent, as the planet warms and the seas rise. The National Climate Assessment warns of a 50% increase in coastal flooding events by 2040, a ticking clock for these towns. Yet, for every boat that sinks, there's a story of someone hauling it back to shore, or building anew. The West Coast's future hangs in the balance, but its people, weathered and wise, are rewriting their story. It's no longer about taming the sea but about learning to sail its wildest waves, with a pride born not of victory, but of survival.